Meghan's lifestyle brand just teased its newest product with 3 words. Arriving tomorrow. The next morning, the reveal came. A box of matches. Not a new jam flavor. Not a wellness supplement or a skincare line. A box of matches bundled free inside certain candle packages. Presented as a luxury finishing touch and promoted with a photograph that the internet immediately turned into the most discussed brand image of the week. We are going to get to that photograph. When you hear the specific details of it, you will understand exactly why it generated the reaction it did. Tonight we are going through the matches, the candles they are supposed to accompany, the tunneling burn pattern that started the quality conversation, the 2016 quote about $100 candles that is now circulating everywhere alongside the current price list, the number 519 wedding candle and the story attached to it, and the full arc from American Riviera orchard to this particular branded Matchbox moment. This is the complete picture of what has been happening with this brand and why this specific launch landed the way it did. Let's start with the matches because the launch details matter more than the general commentary and because the details are genuinely strange. On May 28th, the As Ever social media page posted 3 words, arriving tomorrow. A simple tease suggesting something new was coming. The next morning, the announcement arrived. Limited edition branded matches presented as a luxury complement to the candle collection included as a complimentary item inside the signature scent bundle. 4 candles plus the matches retailing at $256 or approximately $190. The luxury framing of a matchbox attracted immediate commentary because matches are among the most common and lowest cost household items in existence. They are available at every supermarket globally for a matter of cents per box. They are a product most people buy on autopilot without a thought about brand identity or premium positioning. The function creating a flame is entirely simple and the price is entirely negligible. Presenting them as limited edition items with luxury branding connected to a high-end lifestyle collection created a contrast the internet found immediately irresistible. But the product itself was not the most discussed element of the launch. The promotional photograph was, and it deserves its own detailed examination because the specific choices visible in it are what drove the reaction from a brief social media moment into a multi-day conversation. The image chosen to announce the matches showed a candle that had burned in a clear tunnel pattern. The flame going straight down the center of the wax, leaving thick, untouched walls of unburned wax around the outside of the container. This was not a subtly lit atmospheric photograph that happened to capture an imperfect burn. The tunneling was the central visual of the image. The candle was positioned as the hero object, and resting on top of the matchbox in the foreground was a single burned match. On top of a box of fresh and used matches, one burned one. This was not a candid or accidental image. It was a promotional photograph reviewed, selected, approved, and published by the brand's team as the official visual representation of a new product launch. A promotional photograph is the most deliberate possible form of brand communication. Someone looked at this image and decided it was the right one to put in front of the audience. That decision is now part of the brand's public record. If you wanted to design an image that directed maximum attention toward every existing criticism of the candle line simultaneously, the tunneling burn pattern, the wick concerns, the quality questions, the sense that the product does not deliver what the price implies, this photograph would have been a reasonable first attempt, a tunneled candle and a burned match together for a product launch. The internet noticed within hours, and the discourse that followed lasted days, generating responses ranging from genuine frustration from customers who had experienced the candle quality issues to more general commentary about brand judgment and marketing professionalism. Some observers wondered whether the photograph had been approved by someone unfamiliar with the ongoing candle controversy. Others wondered whether it was deliberate and ironic in joke that catastrophically misjudged how the audience would receive it. The brand did not clarify either possibility. The discourse continued either way. One joke that circulated widely summed up the mood. I'm wickless and she's witless. Whether people found it funny or not, the internet ran with it for days. If the Palace debrief is giving you the full picture that other channels skip, the like button costs nothing and it keeps this channel going. Now, let's talk about the candle quality conversation because it predates the matches by several weeks and is the essential context that made the match launch land the way it did. Without the quality conversation already running, the promotional photograph is just a slightly odd image. With it, the photograph became a summary. Multiple customers reported receiving candles that arrived without usable wicks. One of those reports came from a well-known reviewer with a significant following, which amplified the claim considerably beyond the scale of a single consumer complaint. A second report also circulated, though that particular candle came through a third-party seller, and that seller maintained the candle had a wick when it left their possession. Because of that specific uncertainty, the second claim deserves to be treated carefully rather than folded into the first as straightforward confirmation of a systemic problem. What is fair to note is that 2 separate reports circulating simultaneously created enough combined volume for the story to gain genuine and sustained traction across the coverage that follows this brand. But the wick reports were not what dominated the quality conversation for most observers. The burn pattern was candle enthusiasts and candle manufacturers call it tunneling. The flame burns straight down the center of the wax, creating a progressively deeper hole while leaving thick, untouched walls of unburned wax around the outside of the container. In a candle you have paid premium prices for, that means a significant and visible portion of the product you bought is never actually consumed. The wax in the walls stays there, cooling and hardening around the empty column in the middle until the candle burns out before its potential was reached. For people familiar with candle production, tunneling has specific and identifiable causes. In some cases, the wick is proportionally too small for the diameter of the jar. It cannot generate enough heat to create a melt pool that reaches the edges on the first burn, and once the channel is established, the pattern tends to continue. In others, the wax blend does not distribute heat evenly enough for a consistent and complete burn. Neither cause is a hallmark of premium candle manufacturing. High-end candle producers invest specifically in avoiding tunneling because the burn pattern is one of the clearest visible indicators of whether a candle is well made, and customers in the luxury market expect a clean, even burn that uses the full product they paid for. The tunneling criticism landed particularly hard on as ever because the brand is positioned explicitly in the luxury space. A $64 individual candle does not generate the same conversation about tunneling that a $12 supermarket candle would because the expectation for the $64 candle is different in every dimension. Subscribe to the Palace Debrief so you never miss what we cover next, and drop your take in the comments below. Do you think the photograph was a mistake or something else? The no returns policy added a practical and specific dimension to the quality conversation. Customers who received a product with concerns found they had limited options. Since the brand's stated policy is that purchases are generally non-return turnable. When a luxury product costs £190 per bundle and carries a no returns policy, the expectation for quality arriving in the box is not flexible. You are paying premium prices with no safety net if the product does not meet those expectations. The gap between what the price implies and what the reported experience delivered was where much of the frustration was located, and the no returns policy meant customers had nowhere to take that frustration except online. To understand why the matches attracted this level of attention, you have to understand the full brand trajectory, because the Matchbox is not the beginning of this story. It is the latest chapter in one that started well before the first jar of jam went out. The brand was originally called American Riviera Orchard. The name generated curiosity and media coverage, but it ran into complications quickly. Reports indicated the U.S. Trademark Office raised concerns because the name was closely linked to a specific geographic location. Montecito sits in the American Riviera, which creates specific trademark obstacles. There were also reported objections involving similarities to existing brand names already registered. The original branding strategy faced obstacles before it gained momentum. The pivot to as ever solved the trademark problem. Shorter, simpler, less geographically specific, and with a name that carries enough neutrality to be applied across a wide product range. The new name arrived with new ambition and a new visual identity. The first major product launch was strawberry jam, packaged in limited quantities and sent to approximately 50 carefully selected influencers, celebrities, and high-profile contacts. The strategy was textbook luxury influencer marketing. Build excitement through curated and exclusive distribution. Generate social media content from aspirational recipients and create a wave of organic-looking attention before the brand opened to the general public. The selection process for the 50 recipients was itself a story. Who was on the list, who was not on the list, which celebrity had received a jar, and what they posted or did not post about it. The curated distribution generated coverage about who had and had not received a jar, which was itself useful brand attention, which was the point. The execution attracted scrutiny because the anticipated wave of social media content did not arrive in the volume the strategy appeared to require. Many of the 50 recipients posted nothing publicly. The campaign that was supposed to generate days of polished jam photography across multiple high-profile feeds produced a handful of images and considerably less noise than a group of 50 influential accounts might have been expected to generate. Some online users joked about the jars quietly ending up behind everyday pantry items, never making it into a single post. Those comments were jokes, but they reflected a genuine observation that the conversion rate from gifted product to public promotion was lower than the strategy implied. The nickname Scam Jam entered circulation during this period. To be precise, that label was internet commentary and an expression of frustration and dissatisfaction, not a factual finding, legal conclusion, or proven claim. What it captured accurately was the mood of a section of the audience that had expected more visible enthusiasm from the rollout and had received less than expected. The larger observation from that period was about strategy rather than about jam specifically. The brand appeared to be operating on the assumption that Meghan's public profile and her network of high-profile contacts would convert reliably into visible brand enthusiasm, and that strong marketing framing would be sufficient to transform everyday household products, jam, honey, tea, candles into luxury desirables. Those are reasonable assumptions for a celebrity lifestyle brand to begin with. What the jam rollout provided was the first test of whether those assumptions would hold in practice. The answer was less clear than the launch strategy had implied. By the time the candle complaints and the Matchbox launch were generating coverage, many observers felt they recognized the same underlying pattern at work across three different product categories. A high-profile launch, a level of marketing investment that implied significant consumer demand, and then a conversation about whether the product itself justified what the marketing suggested. Now, let's talk about the quote because it is one of the most specific and most frequently circulated pieces of context in the entire as-ever conversation. In 2016, Meghan appeared at a conference in Atlanta while promoting her lifestyle blog. During that appearance, she said in reference to her own site, "There are no $100 candles on my site. That's so obnoxious." The Signature Scent collection currently retails at $256. Individual candles from the As range retail at $64 each. The 2016 comment was made in a specific context. She was describing her blog's ethos and positioning it as accessible rather than aspirational in the luxury sense. The current brand is explicitly positioned in the premium and luxury space. Those are different market positions and a person is entitled to move between them over a decade. Positioning changes, audiences change, businesses evolve. What does not change is the specific word she chose in 2016. Not expensive, not unnecessary, not overpriced, obnoxious. That word is doing specific work in the sentence. It communicates not just that the price is high, but that the price is a character judgment. That choosing to sell a $100 candle says something unflattering about the kind of person doing the selling. The criticism is not economic. It is moral. When that word resurfaces alongside a $256 candle bundle, it does not need editorial commentary. The juxtaposition is self-explanatory, and no amount of brand evolution or market repositioning changes what the word obnoxious means or what it implied when she chose it. The number 519 candle adds its own specific dimension. The name references May 19th, the date of the royal wedding at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. The brand's marketing describes it as evoking the atmosphere of that special morning with language focused on sunshine, blue skies, joy, and the emotion of the occasion. The concept is to offer customers a scented memory of a personally significant moment priced at $64. The complication that critics immediately identified is a specific and widely circulated story from royal coverage that has persisted across several years of reporting. Multiple media accounts have described an episode from the wedding preparations involving concerns about the scent inside St. George's Chapel. According to those accounts, discussions were raised about whether additional fragrance should be introduced before guests arrived, and some staff reportedly considered the idea unnecessary given the chapel's historical and ceremonial significance. Later indicated their products were used as part of the preparations which kept the story circulating in royal coverage by providing a specific and verifiable reference point. None of those accounts has been comprehensively verified, and the specific details are disputed across different versions of the story. What is observable is that a candle marketed as capturing the joy and atmosphere of the royal wedding morning, sold by the person at the center of the stories about the chapel's fragrance, did not launch into a neutral conversation. The story was already part of the background reading for anyone who covers or follows royal coverage closely, and the number 519 candle activated it immediately. The Netflix context matters here because it tells you something specific about where the as-ever brand sits financially. When Harry and Meghan signed their Netflix deal in 2020, the arrangement was reported as a major equity partnership with significant long-term commitment on both sides. Over subsequent years, the structure changed. Reports described a shift to a first-look deal, which industry observers understood as a more limited commitment than the original. Then came reports earlier this year that Netflix had exited involvement with the consumer product side of the business entirely. Whether those reports are fully accurate has not been publicly confirmed by either party. What was publicly noted was that certain unsold products, including teas and baking mixes, were reportedly distributed internally after sales apparently came in below expectations. A website issue was also reported to have briefly exposed inventory data that was not intended to be publicly visible. The specific details of what that data showed were disputed, and the full picture remains unclear. What the episode did was give an already skeptical audience a specific focal point for asking questions about the relationship between the brand's sellout announcements and its actual inventory levels. Here is the specific question that observation generates. If demand consistently and dramatically exceeds supply, why include complementary matches inside candle bundles? Why add an incentive to a purchase that does not need incentivizing? Companies add complementary items for legitimate reasons: brand building, customer experience, product presentation. But the specific logic of the gift with purchase strategy is that it encourages purchase by adding perceived value. That logic applies most clearly when purchase needs encouraging. When genuine demand dramatically exceeds supply, purchase does not require encouragement. The two signals, consistent sellouts and added promotional items, do not naturally sit alongside each other, and observers who are already asking questions about the sellout narrative found the Matchbox a useful new angle from which to ask them again. The Harper's Bazaar quote adds a final layer. Meghan said in that interview, "The moment that you start making all of your personal decisions based on external judgment, then you lose your authenticity." The quote attracted immediate response because lifestyle brands are built almost entirely around external perception. The curated photography, the aspirational imagery, the carefully crafted brand identity are all in direct service of how an audience sees and responds to the product. External judgment is not a threat to a lifestyle brand. External judgment is the mechanism by which a lifestyle brand either succeeds or fails. The quote and the business model are in tension, and the tension was noted. The Bloomberg interview remark about nude tights that wearing them had felt inauthentic during her working royal years attracted attention for a different but related reason. It placed a very specific item of clothing at the center of a conversation about authenticity and personal expression. Commentators comparing that framing with the current brand, its luxury pricing, its royal title usage at public appearances, its careful presentation found material for the same observation that the accessible anti-pretension image associated with earlier Meghan is a long way from where the brand is currently positioned. The Matchbox did not create that gap. It did not create the quality questions or the Wick reports or the tunneling controversy. It did not write the 2016 quote or name the number 519 candle or attach the chapel fragrance story to the brand. What it did was provide a single very photogenic object, a burned match resting on a box of new ones next to a tunneled candle that gathered all of those existing threads into one image. That is why the launch generated the response it generated. Not because matches are inherently outrageous or because branded merchandise is unusual. Because the photograph said in one frame everything the ongoing conversation had been trying to say in thousands of words across weeks of coverage. This is not a small startup trying to find its footing with limited resources and an unclear market position. Meghan has access to experienced brand advisors, marketing professionals, media expertise, and a public profile that most entrepreneurs would spend years trying to build. The product line is not being built by someone learning the industry from the outside. It is being built with professional infrastructure and professional guidance. That is precisely why the expectations are higher, and precisely why each misstep generates more commentary than a comparable error from a smaller brand would. The Harper's Bazaar quote adds a final layer worth examining. Meghan said in that interview, "The moment that you start making all of your personal decisions based on external judgment, then you lose your authenticity." The quote attracted immediate response because lifestyle brands are built almost entirely on external perception. The curated photography, the aspirational imagery, the carefully crafted storytelling, the brand identity are all in direct service of how an audience sees and responds to the product. External judgment is not a threat to a lifestyle brand. External judgment is the primary mechanism by which a lifestyle brand succeeds or fails. When a customer chooses to buy a $64 candle from As Ever rather than a $12 candle from elsewhere, that decision is entirely a function of external perception. The quote and the business model are in a tension that the audience noticed and commented on at length. The Bloomberg comment about nude tights attracted attention for the same underlying reason. Describing hosiery as inauthentic during her working royal years was a specific and somewhat unexpected choice of example in a broader conversation about self-expression and observers comparing that framing with the current brand, its luxury pricing, its royal title usage at public events, its carefully crafted premium positioning found the distance between the two images useful material for the same observation about how the accessible anti-high pretension persona has evolved. Whether you read the As Ever brand trajectory as a brand finding its footing, a brand that has lost the thread of its original identity, or something more complicated than either of those, one thing the Matchbox launch demonstrated is that every new product now arrives into a conversation that has been building for 2 years. The matches were not the start of anything new. They were the latest chapter of a conversation that started with jam jars that high-profile recipients mostly did not post about, continued through a candle line that generated quality complaints and a no-returns policy that gave customers nowhere to go, and arrived at a promotional photograph of a burned match on a box of new ones beside a visibly tunneled candle. Approved and published as the brand's own launch image. What do you make of the As Ever trajectory? And do you think the photograph was a genuine oversight or a misread of the audience? Drop your honest take in the comments below. Subscribe to the Palace Debrief so you never miss what we cover next. The like button keeps this channel doing this kind of analysis in full rather than the summary version. Until the next one.